On July 8th, 2010, ESPN ran a one-of-a-kind program on his channel called The Decision, where LeBron James, with an audience of millions over a 75-minute segment, watched to see where LeBron James would sign in that offseason. At this date and time, the player empowerment movement would start as LeBron James decided to pave his own future and path, as Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh would all team up to go after championships together on their own accord. People always claim LeBron James started the player empowerment movement and ended up ruining the NBA, as other stars over the years would control their own future or control their organizations to the point of ruin. Well, what if I told you that what LeBron James did was possibly justified, and the development of the movement wasn't ruined by him when he started it, but pioneered by him, but ruined by others as the years passed on? In this video, I want to go back and take a deeper look at the decision LeBron made, see why it was made alongside his other moves with this movement as he seeks to control his own destiny as an NBA player, and then compare the most viral cases from players who would end up doing the same after him. If this sounds like a good time for you, I hope you sit back, listen, and enjoy as I try to make sense of this theory that I believe people unfairly put on LeBron James. But enough with this intro. You already know who it is. Roll it!
3, 2, 1.
Weights in the weight room, so he stitched up in the left.
Now, before we go about talking about the ramifications of LeBron James's decision, let's first take a step back and provide some context towards his decision in the first place. After a hard-fought 6-game series with the Eastern Overlords, at the time the Big Four Boston Celtics, with Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and Rajon Rondo, LeBron James was finally ending his contract with the Cleveland Cavaliers. This season marked off the second best season he would ever have with the team record-wise, in a season where LeBron James won his second straight league MVP trophy. After losing to a team who continued to torture his team year after year in the playoffs, he had to make a very big decision, and it branches off into two separate roads of thought. One side of the road, he continues to put his career on the line to play with the Cleveland Cavaliers for another 4 years, and on the other side, he signs with a new team that would give him a better opportunity to win. Now, the average person, you'd probably go back to your hometown team and try to continue to win a championship with them. If you think about it really hardly though, the Boston Celtics are about to get older, and then that barrier of entry to the NBA Finals will become a lot easier as they fall off, and eventually you would see the Orlando Magic fall as Dwight Howard got tired of Orlando, which is one of the only few primary teams that actually stood in his way year to year from making the finals since his first taste of the NBA Finals in 2006. However, let's think about this a little bit deeper about LeBron James' situation in Cleveland. Throughout his first time in Cleveland, what was the primary talk about his team? It was either trading for a co-star or attracting one via free agency. And if you think about his time in Cleveland, the best teammates he has ever had there was Mo Williams and perhaps his longtime center in Zydrunas Ilgauskas. In what world is those two guys going to help you go over the edge with a team full of shooters and a top big man in the league in Orlando, and the Boston Celtics with their star-studded starting lineup? The management LeBron James had in Cleveland was really unable to give LeBron James any confidence that if he came back, they would make something happen that would give him the help that he needed to make that jump once more into the NBA Finals. And let's just establish now, the Cavaliers were way too good to get good draft picks, and the best players they signed in free agency were a bunch of older stars out of their prime, and the list goes quite far. Shaquille O'Neal at 37 years old, Ben Wallace at 34 years old, Antoine Jameson at 34 years old, and Wally Zerviak at 31 years old. The list goes on and on. And then let's not forget that Cleveland, Ohio is not a place to live in, and it's not the first place a lot of free agents would go and call home.
I just stayed in my hotel room, man. Every time I look out my window, it's pretty depressing out here, man. It's bad. It's bad.
So you're not going out?
No. No going out in Cleveland, man. It's all factories.
Do you regret anything that you said about Cleveland?
Not at all. You like it? You think Cleveland's cool? I mean, I never heard anybody say, I'm going to Cleveland on vacation. I mean, what's so good about Cleveland?
So with that added to the list, is any marquee free agent going to want to sign there? The answer is no. And of course, added to the fact that they never made any major moves to help LeBron take that next step in the first place, you can imagine that he probably didn't want to go back because of that. Yes, it would be the more admirable thing to do by fan standards, NBA standards, history standards, but if he were to never do it, never be able to get over that hump, would people still call him the GOAT like people regard him today, with 0 championships to his name just because he stayed in Cleveland? Just think about past situations of the same type of occurrence of people who stayed in situations despite the bleak future if they did so. And I'm sure some of y'all are going to tell me other examples that I can't think of, but the biggest example I can think of in this case in the modern era is Kevin Garnett in Minnesota, who tried time after time again to win something in Minnesota to no avail, and came back time and time again and only had 1 conference finals appearance to show for it. Even through all of that, the organization finally had to trade him to start all over from scratch, since they just knew the writing on the wall. And same writing on the wall could have been for LeBron James's future with the lack of help he had for them. But on the other side, he could do whatever he wanted, go to a marquee destination, have the ability to attract other stars, which he did, and best case scenario, have assets that other teams would want for a trade. But LeBron took his own path via the cap space the Miami Heat had, and his friendship with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, who was originally supposed to be Carmelo Anthony, by the way. The 3 teamed up and became a big 3 in Miami, despite the anger of NBA fans, personalities, and even players alike.
You still a nail biter?
I have a little bit, not of late.
Well, you've had everybody else biting their nails, so I guess it's time for them to stop chewing. The answer to the question everybody wants to know. LeBron, what's your decision?
In this fall, man, this is very tough. In this fall, I'm going to take my talents to South Beach and join the Miami Heat.
Miami Heat. That was the conclusion you woke up with this morning.
That was the conclusion I woke up with this morning.
Why?
Like I said before, I feel like it's going to give me the best opportunity to win, and to win for multiple years. And not only just to win in the regular season, or just to win 5 games in a row or 3 games in a row. I want to be able to win championships, and I feel like I can compete down there.
Was it always in your plan to go and play with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh?
Well, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. To say it was always in my plans, I can't say it was always in my plans, because I never thought it was possible. But the things that the Miami Heat franchise have done to be able to free up cap space and to be able to put themselves in a position this summer to have all 3 of us, you know, it was hard to turn down. I mean, you know, those are 2 great players, 2 of the greatest players that we have in this game today. And, you know, you add me, we're going to be a really good.
It's absolutely ridiculous. I ran Please Stay LBJ. This party is because of our organization, and we've supported him for 7 years now. And for him to go on there and drag us through the mud for 7 years and stab us in the heart, he deserves everything he gets. I hope he never wins anything in Miami. He is dead to me.
What would just happen was disgusting. The guy gave up in Game 3, and this is what he has to reward us with. Like, this is terrible. He wants to go to a city. He calls himself a sports historian. A guy who embraces the NBA and knows knowledge about the NBA. And he goes to Miami, where the most fickle fans are? This is terrible. This is the worst thing that could ever happen to Cleveland since Modell taking the Browns away. Bottom line. Bottom line.
He's one of our own. He's one of our own. That's what makes it so painful. Art Modell, you know, he was 65 years old. He went away and the Browns came back. LeBron can never come back. He's one of our own. He's from Akron. He has a tattoo of loyalty on his body. And he ignored that to go chase the championship with Chris Bosh in Miami. He follows Chris Bosh. Chris Bosh should be following him. It's ridiculous. It's embarrassing. Good riddance. Good riddance. Dan Gilbert will bring us a winner.
And with that broadcast over and done with, the NBA world was given their answer. LeBron James was a Miami Heat and officially broke a barrier no player has ever been able to do, or at least choose to do. A truly first of its kind, as before then, NBA players were about loyalty to a franchise and getting it done. The only times you've seen stars leave back then was due to trades or simply letting themselves go. Shaq with the Magic leaving because he wasn't wanted back by the fans despite wanting to stay there and giving it his all. KG being traded later in his career so the Minnesota Timberwolves could restart, and the list goes on. But up until that point, GMs and owners had the power to make decisions over the players' careers, and it was mainly up to them to make moves happen for those players to get a championship. The only real power a player could have was through a no-trade clause, so they didn't get dropped off just anywhere if the organization wanted to get rid of you or what have you. But before we get into the current day ramifications of this decision, I think Eamon Shumpert's opinion on this situation serves as a great closure to this chapter of the discussion of player empowerment and LeBron James's decision to leave for greener pastures elsewhere. So after that move was made on July 8th, 2010, where LeBron James went to the Miami Heat to play with Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade, there became a huge shift in the NBA culture that was done due to that move. But let's start with the most obvious one that started first before we get into the one that really changed the NBA landscape forever. And that first culture shift was the necessity of a super team to win championships in the NBA. Before then, franchises would center around their superstars and add pieces around them to bring in success for the team. On the rare occasion, you'll get a superstar that leads the team that drafted them for another one for one reason or another. Take Shaq again on the Orlando Magic, for example, who was basically driven out of Orlando, went to LA to win a ring, who already had pieces around to try to compete. Then of course, the drafting Kobe Bryant in '96, wait a few years, and then they produced one of the few three-peats in NBA history. That sort of thing happened very rarely back in the older days of the NBA, but now due to the move of LeBron James, made that meta change forever. From a homegrown star in the draft, raise him into stardom with role players or secondary players around in the draft, or again, just make a super team with the future assets or current assets already on the team to go on and get immediate success. But what the Miami Heat Big Three did was as calculated as can be. LeBron, Bosh, and Wade all made their contracts align with each other, and Pat Riley made the cap space to be all with each other in the same year so they could all sign for the future chances of success in the NBA to win a NBA championship. That right there is the best case scenario for a super team if I've ever seen one. And funny enough, it was almost emulated years later, but we'll get onto that one later. But what about teams that couldn't do that? Well, let's start with our first failed attempt at a super team due to this culture shift. The first victims were, of course, the Los Angeles Lakers and the Brooklyn Nets, both for the same reasons. But first, with the Los Angeles Lakers.
It has been developing for months. Breaking news tonight here on SportsCenter. And it looks like Dwight Howard is on the move, a deal that just really came about over the last couple of hours. Howard going to the Lakers, and Denver getting Andre Iguodala, Philadelphia getting Andrew Bynum. Those are really the big parts of this deal. The Magic, Aaron Aflalo from Denver, along with Al Harrington and his contract. So there are the pieces right now in this four-team deal, and there are some draft picks there as well.
ESPN.com's Mark Stein is reporting Steve Nash is joining Kobe Bryant in the LA Lakers backcourt. A sign and trade between the Lakers and the Suns will bring the 38-year-old two-time MVP to the LA Lakers. 3 years, $25 million is the deal right now, as a determined push from Kobe Bryant helps trigger and helps complete this trade. We welcome back into SportsCenter Beto Duran of ESPN LA 710. And Beto, we were just talking about Steve Nash possibly turning away from LA, looking maybe to New York, maybe to Toronto, but here he is in LA. What does he bring to the Lakers?
He brings, without a doubt, an established backcourt. Steve Nash is going to be a player that can completely change the way the Lakers' offense is going, because Kobe Bryant, as we know, is also getting older. He doesn't have to facilitate and create as much as he's had to in the past now. Steve Nash is a player that's very well respected amongst his peers. A lot of praise from Kobe Bryant and the Lakers organization about Steve Nash, and the fact that he can come in there and you know that he's going to be your guy. He's going to be the quarterback. He's going to be the coordinator. He's going to do everything you need of him to do, and he can go and work very well with Kobe Bryant.
Coming into the 2012-2013 season, after losing to a very young and improving OKC Thunder, the Lakers seen the writing on the wall with Kobe Bryant coming closer to the end of his peak as a player with Pau Gasol, as they tried winning a championship ever since the two championships won in '09. in the 2010 NBA Finals. So the Lakers decided to make a move that pushed the needle forward, emulating what the Miami Heat did only 2 years before. In a 14 trade, the Lakers received All-NBA big man and perennial DPOY winner Dwight Howard from the Orlando Magic to upgrade their center position from Andrew Bynum to create one of the best front courts in the NBA in himself and Pau Gasol. But then, at the very same time, traded away 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks for a very aging Steve Nash from the Suns to give Kobe Bryant what people believe was his best starting point guard he has ever had. And considering how he still went out there and averaged a double-double in assist points at the age of 37 before the fact, I can see where people were coming from with this one. But with that, created a possible big four with Kobe Bryant, Pau Gasol, Steve Nash, and Dwight Howard, who was thought to terrorize the SAC Western Conference that year. But as we all know, due to injuries from Pau Gasol and Steve Nash, the team was never really able to get anywhere with the team. And with Dwight Howard leaving for Houston, the failed one-year experiment ended the Lakers super team. But it was only the beginning, as only a year later, a team within the NBA would make the same mistake, trying to rush a process, trading for older pieces to make a Walmart brand super team. And the second victim of this trend, started by LeBron James, would be the Brooklyn Nets.
Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Jason Terry, all going to the Brooklyn Nets. Celtics get 3 number ones, 2014, 2016, 2018. Humphreys, Wallace, Evans, just a bunch of stuff. Clearly the Celtics are tanking. They're redeveloping for the future. What's your first overall assessment of this deal when you hear it?
Well, first and foremost, clearly the players coming back completely irrelevant. None of those guys that they got back, Chris Humphreys, Wallace, Bogans, any of those guys play into the Celtics' future plans. It's all about the picks. It's all about sending really Pierce and Garnett somewhere because neither one of those guys wanted to be in any sort of rebuilding mode. Right. They get an opportunity now to go play for a team that can contend. This is all about Boston basically going to the bottom to start over again, which makes me think maybe Rajon Rondo's next. Is Rajon Rondo really going to be around to play with this group of guys? Is he going to want to buy into that in any way, shape, or form? Coming back from an ACL injury, he's still a young player. He'll be old by the time the Celtics are good again with this strategy. So he might be the next guy to go. I mean, obviously, Boston is just gutting this. And it's amazing because you think they're trading these guys to a team in the same division. Yeah, right. That shows you right there where Boston's mindset is. They don't even consider themselves a team that's even, close to the Brooklyn Nets. And now they go on, and I think Brooklyn, with this move, Brooklyn might be the team now you look at and say, hey, maybe they leapfrog Indiana and Chicago. Maybe they're now the second best team in the Eastern Conference.
Well, they got the 5 with Lopez, so KG's not the biggest guy there. Darren Williams, of course, as well, and then you have Pierce.
After the 2012-13 season, the Brooklyn Nets saw themselves with their best record in years at 49-33 after a 14-14 start with then coach Avery Bradley. But after losing to the Bulls in a tough 7-game series in the first round and seeing how the Heat won the Eastern Conference and the championship due to their methods of making a super team, the Nets decided to follow suit. Now, the Nets already had a solid trio in Brook Lopez, Joe Johnson, and newly added Darren Williams, but to try to push the needle into championship territory, the Nets made this earth-shattering move at the time to win a championship by trading for a 37-year-old Kevin Garnett, a 36-year-old Paul Pierce, and a 36-year-old Jason Terry. And for them, a plethora of draft capital would have been traded, and again, would have probably been worth it if they won a championship and stayed relevant for a few more years somehow. But in reality, trading for players who are only a decade and some change away from AARP membership isn't the best move to make, especially as the Nets then produced a worse season than they did the year before, and instead of making the finals, they only made it one step closer than they did last year to a second round out. And as we all know, Paul Pierce left for the Wizards, KG was traded to his own stopping ground in Minnesota, and Jason Terry was traded to the Kings. So in 1 year, they traded for 3 old men, didn't achieve anything, traded most of those old men away, and proceeded to fail in the future, and due to that, creating one of the best two-way duos in the NBA. However, for someone else's team in the Boston Celtics with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. This is one of the effects of LeBron James's move to Miami. Even though it started off slow in the early 2010s, LeBron's move actually planted a seed in organization's head that trading for stars to speed up the process of winning a championship could work with the right moves. And before then, you'd never seen that really happen for the most part, and if it did, it didn't turn into anything much due to that. Now, those two examples were the pioneers of the process of trying to win a championship as quickly and really drastically as possible via very, very, very risky moves. But fast forward to 2022, where we see the landscape of the NBA now is full of those type of risky moves. But in current day 2022, let's think about those teams that were either made to become super teams or just teams that were doomed from the start. And the list of those teams are endless. Again, let's just think of the ones that happened in 2022 that we have right now. The Chicago Bulls traded for Nikola Vucevic to make a makeshift big three of himself, Zach LaVine, and DeMar DeRozan that ended with them being only 10 games over 500 last year and are now a 10th seed in the East, 5 games under 500. The Lakers trading part of their core for Russell Westbrook, which gave LeBron and the Lakers the worst record they've had since LeBron James' first record in LA, and are still reaping the consequences as they are now giving the Pelicans a prime opportunity for a top 5 pick or so in the next year's draft. The Clippers trading away 5 first-round picks for Paul George, and even as of recently, the Timberwolves trading for Rudy Gobert to match up with Karl-Anthony Towns a season after getting their best record since the Jimmy Butler experiment to now being currently struggling as a team and being near the bottom of the Western Conference. And that's just the trades right now affecting the NBA. Super team culture only becomes stronger and stronger, especially if it's a concept that's supported by championships being won, just like LeBron James winning 2 with the Heat and the Warriors winning 2 with KD. But luckily, there are some homegrown teams still persevering even during these times that shows the organic way is the best way to win a championship.
Here we go.
Shake it.
Shake it.
Shake that. Shake that. No, I don't think so at all. Because when you think about the Lakers trying to pry Kyrie away for a little bit and still keep AD and maybe LeBron, they got what they got in Golden State, which is a super team. You know, Boston's going to try to make a move, which is a super team. Miami is sniffing out Mitchell could be a super team down in Miami. I mean, no, it's not over with. Why?
Super team. We don't just mean a great team with lots of great players like the Lakers in the 80s, right? We're talking about a team that is put together where you take superstars who aren't on the team and bring them in. Is it over?
No.
I would say, I'd say yes, but I don't mean it'll never happen again. A super team can win a championship. But as a way of doing business,
a super team just won the championship, Max.
Well, how do you mean the Warriors?
It's a super team.
But yeah, but I just said, wait, Key, see how Key's not even listening. Key, I just said I'm not talking about like the '80s Lakers who were great. That's like these Warriors. I mean a team where you take a couple different superstars from different teams and put them together. It's not that that'll never happen again or teams won't still try to do it. It's that what we're seeing is success is happening with teams that have the foundation, that add a little piece here and there.
Brooklyn would have done it if it wasn't for the pandemic and people being hurt. Yeah, but they would have, and we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
But Key, they didn't. And now the market for singular superstars now, especially if they're aging and seen as mercenaries, is shrinking.
Yeah, but just keep waiting. I mean, the young talent, there will be a lot of young talent that their time will run out with their franchises. We will be talking about this
exactly.
more.
I was just about to say that, Jay. It's gonna be people moving around, man. You don't know what Ja want to do in the future. You don't know what Luka gonna do.
Donovan Mitchell. Look what's happening with Utah.
I mean, you just don't know.
The right thing could always happen and change everything. Like the right situation. I'm just saying, guys. The Milwaukee Bucks, the Boston Celtics, they're the Warriors.
What year were you born, Max?
73.
You sound like you was born in 37.
Why?
Because you just sound old. Like, you act like it's Boston Celtics and what the Lakers have done in the past.
No, I'm talking about right now. You know, the Milwaukee Bucks now with Giannis. The Celtics just made the finals. I'm thinking about the Warriors. These are teams that are basically organically built, and then the right complementary piece, even if it's a super one in KD, but is brought in. That's very different from what happened in Miami with LeBron, or especially what happened in Brooklyn, where you're just bringing in a whole bunch of parts and hoping.
Well, one of the things is there's no players that have the LeBron James power left in the NBA right now. Right now, the last time we saw the last people that were a team that was the Clippers and Kawhi and Paul George. But there's no power like that.
Yeah,
eventually Luka will have that power. Right? Somebody like a LaMelo Ball will probably get that type of power.
Despite his current situation in the media right now, Kanye West has a lot of bars in his songs that really make sense and shows many things about the world. And one of those things is from his songs Power, from his best album, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. And y'all know it, I know it, and it goes, no one man should have all that power. And that is something that is pretty prevalent in the NBA culture nowadays, and the player empowerment movement that gives the players, or at least the star ones, the ability to make their own decisions about their career, or in extreme cases, controlling operations within the team. In Cleveland and Miami, you didn't see much influence from LeBron on team operations and team building. The only things that influenced the NBA slowly but surely was the creation of super teams in that era. But after the success of the Miami Heat winning 2 championships, he then goes back to Cleveland and creates another super team in himself, Kyrie Irving, who was already there as the #1 pick of his own draft, and the newly traded Kevin Love, who was brought there via trade. Once again, LeBron James have assembled himself a new super team replacing the one he had in Miami. But what I am getting at here is that instead of him simply just using his influence and the friendship of Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade to form a super team, he came in and made things happen in Cleveland, which starts the GM era from everybody. And he was known for making many moves to make actions happen within his team. For example, publicly convincing Tristan Thompson to come back to the Cavs on a cheaper deal than he wanted. And things like this would continue all throughout his 30s as an NBA player, and even until current day as we know right now. Advocating for deals for Tristan Thompson and J.R. Smith, pulling strings for the AD trade when he touched down as a Laker after his first year, and most egregiously, the trade for Russell Westbrook, which dragged down the Los Angeles Lakers and is currently making the AD trade look less and less worth it because of those picks that will only end up in the hands of the Pelicans. But as LeBron James was dictating his own career and being a controversial figure in basketball due to his actions, his influence would finally cause a real shift in the NBA, with this one making an entire shift of power in the NBA.
Stephen A., the news again coming in moments ago, Kevin Durant heading to the Golden State Warriors. How are you viewing this move from Durant?
Well, I'm viewing it as the weakest move I've ever seen from a superstar. Plain and simple. That's just how I look at it. It's not that he's leaving Oklahoma City. If you're not happy there and you want to move on and you want to grow as a player, or, there's nothing wrong with that. He's one of the top 3 players in the world. He's a quintessential superstar. He deserves all the credit in the world for the talent that he possesses. But the flip side is this. They were up 3-1 in the Western Conference Finals. Not 1, not 2, but 3 different times. He was 48 minutes removed from getting to the NBA Finals by winning the Western Conference. 3 times he failed, particularly in Game 6. And you depart for the team that beat you when you're on the cusp of getting to the finals yourself, or ultimately winning the championship for the franchise that you've been with since you've come into the NBA. I think it's incredibly weak. And I don't want to hear any comparisons to that of LeBron James when LeBron James left Cleveland for South Beach. When LeBron left Cleveland, the cupboard was bare. He was basically the only dude in Cleveland. It was LeBron James and a bunch of no-names. In the case of Kevin Durant, you have one of the top 5 players in the world as your teammate. You've got Billy Donovan, who's proven to be an exceptional coach. You've got a coaching staff. You've got a first-class organization. You've got Enes Kanter, Steven Adams, and all of these boys. You are legitimately a championship contender. You are the difference. You are the superstar, and you depart for the team that beat you, that's the 2-time reigning defending Western Conference champions, who's won a championship in the last 2 years. You're jumping on a bandwagon as far as I'm concerned. That's just the way that I look at it. I don't think there's any way to deny that. All the reporters, whether it's Ramona, it's Chris Broussard, everybody doing an exceptional job, pointing out the things that they point out. I don't disagree with anything anybody is saying. But in the end, what it comes down to is that Kevin Durant is one of the top 3 players in the world, and he ran away from the challenge that he faces in order to jump on the bandwagon of a team that's a little bit better, that's already rife with at least one superstar, a couple of guys that can really, really get it done. I just view it as him jumping on the bandwagon, and I think it's the weakest move I've ever seen by a superstar, plain and simple.
But when you guys got the news that KD was joining the Warriors, what was that group chat like?
This nigga. That's how it was, bro. It was just like,
because you're gonna have to see them in the finals.
I'm like, for what? That's how we all looking like, huh? Then we like, well, what Russ got to say about it? That's what we all. What Russ finna say about this shit? This shit is crazy.
On July 4th, Independence Day 2016, which ironically enough was the day the NBA wasn't free anymore, Kevin Durant shocks the world as he says on Players Tribune that he plans to join the Golden State Warriors on a 2-year deal. And as you can imagine, this move absolutely shocks the NBA world. From all over, people freak out about the thought of the team who just broke MJ's Chicago Bulls wins record now adding a top 5 player in the NBA in KD to terrorize the NBA for years to come. And it all ties back to LeBron James' decision to go to Miami as he seeks to win a championship on his own accord. But just like the Stephen A. Smith clip earlier in the section showed, the move by KD was possibly one of the weakest, if not the weakest move in NBA history. And like he said, he was set up for success with the OKC Thunder. Sam Presti put around him a great team of talent that led you all the way to the conference finals, up 3-1 against the said team he potentially went against. And again, he could have potentially had the opportunity to beat LeBron himself, who had a super team. But instead of running it back, decided to join them himself. Now, the obvious contrast between the two situations here is that LeBron was stuck in purgatory while KD had the backing to win multiple championships in OKC as he saw fit. But this video isn't for that, maybe another day. However, what it is about why he made that move. And it all started with LeBron James going to Miami. Now, to go a tad off subject, something tells me that even if LeBron never made that choice, he probably still would have gone about doing that, as he was quoted to say, "I've been second my whole life. I was the second best player in high school. I was the second best player in the draft. I was the second in MVP voting 3 times. I came second in the finals. I'm tired of being second. I'm not going to settle for that. I'm done with it." Which shows that if there were to be a second place in the Western Conference, which he was, he may have just jumped ship to first place to go on to skip all of the struggle. But I digress, because moves like this would only become reinforced as he went about winning 2 championships with the Golden State Warriors. And even to this day, NBA players still didn't appreciate what he did to the league due to that.
Y'all won a lot of championships, but it was lame as for 4 or 5 years. There was a media run and there was a hype train of a franchise running through, which were the Warriors.
Yeah.
And that was KD doing that. You know what I mean? There's just certain points where it just seemed unfair. We're not knocking it, to each their own, but it was just like you had to wait until this narrative ended in a moment of history.
Man, we still don't get no calls though. So when they start,
I'm not knocking it, but at the same time, I'm still playing against Andre Iguodala, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and whoever else. Like, that's like playing versus MJ, fool. Like, it still don't make no sense. It doesn't justify anything. And y'all won a lot of championship, but it was lame as So like literally,
Steph just won one by itself. Steph just won one by itself,
and that's perfectly fine. I'm talking about when you lame ass did that for 2 or 3 straight years. That was lame as.
Was that us, or was that us following the trends of where the league was going? Had already been.
Word to mother, I would never go recruit no KD. I don't give a damn who was there.
But getting away from that, due to that move, another wave of teams noticing how KD went to jump ship only created more players wanting to do the same from their original teams or teams that they were already on that banned up elsewhere. Because like the clip I showed earlier from Max Kellerman, the NBA became an arms race to see who could win with the most talent on one team. But with that also brought a bigger trend of players making decisions for themselves within the franchise or for their franchise in more extreme cases. One big example that comes to mind is when Kawhi Leonard came to LA to become a Clipper, but he asked specifically for Paul George to be alongside him for him to sign with the Clippers in the first place, and of course, the public recruitment of Anthony Davis from the Lakers organization, which ended with a trade to the Lakers. You can also point to many violations that teams made around the league that ended up with draft capital being taken away. The Bucks violated the free agency rules in pursuit of Bogdan Bogdanovic, who just ended up being in Atlanta anyway. The Miami Heat lost a 2nd-round pick for trying to recruit Kyle Lowry before the sign and trade was made from Toronto. And of course, the violation made from Philly this year, where they got draft picks taken away for illegally recruiting DeAnthony Melton, and weird enough, a 38-year-old PJ Tucker. But in current day, what do we have? NBA players all around trying to get their way with their teams by doing constant infractions that usually end up going wrong in one way or another. But getting further into the subject, let's skip a few more years after KD's decision to go to Golden State, because on July 6th and 7th in 2019, KD, Kyrie, and DeAndre Jordan decided to make their own Walmart version of a Big Three. And I'm only saying that because DeAndre Jordan being here, as they wanted to join together to win a championship in Brooklyn. Does that sound familiar? Because with that signing, you basically can also say that the Nets signed away their ownership of the team to the trio as they came in and made changes immediately that jeopardized the team in many ways. But before I go into this, I made a video on this entire subject on my channel, so be sure to check it out in the description or the info cards on the screen. But long story short, to baseline one of the many things they've done to change the culture of the Nets that was based on team chemistry and being led by D'Angelo Russell, and that was the firing of Kenny Atkinson. And you want to know why? Because DeAndre Jordan didn't agree with his philosophy allowing Jarrett Allen to start over him. So they ran Kenny out of Brooklyn, and after that season was over, signed Steve Nash to be basically a puppet of a coach who ended up getting fired this current season, funny enough, so DeAndre can start. And then to add salt to that wound, traded him for James Harden. But as we all know, that ship burned very quickly. And if you want to add the list of other players dictating how their careers will go in very drastic ways, of course we can also add the Ben Simmons saga in Philly, where he straight up avoided the team and hurting their chances to compete in the NBA in many ways, even sacrificing his own contract in that effort. Anthony Davis deliberately sitting out games in New Orleans as he waited for the Lakers to take him away. James Harden running out every star he played with in Houston, and depending who you are, you can even add Kyrie Irving's situation to this. The list can go on, but it really does bring back the point I made in the clip I showed earlier. What will happen when other superstars in the NBA who will eventually know the levers that they have within the organization? Luka Doncic is one of the best players in this generation, but is continuously held back by his teammates in Dallas. What might happen when he wants to go away and win a championship in the NBA? LaMelo Ball has always been known to be about all the glitters and gold in life, and Charlotte is absolutely in the dumps at the moment. You never know what he might try to pull if things don't improve by the time his rookie extension ends years from now. The more and more the NBA stars over the league do these types of actions, whether it's to be the creations of super teams being recruitment of each other, destroying a franchise by your own volition, or just plain out making earth-shattering moves for an easy ring, it'll either improve the chances of other players doing the same or have the fans of this sport we call basketball be more critical of these stars for their actions. Kyrie Irving has been labeled as a drama queen and a nuisance to a team by the public eye due to what he did a year ago in his current situation, which is basically passed over by now. Ben Simmons was labeled the same for the way he handled himself on his way out of Philly. KD is known as a weaker NBA superstar for what he did in 2016, even though he is again one of the best skillful players in the NBA and is part of the MVP race this season. And you can either point it at the current culture we live in, or again, it all started with LeBron James making a simple decision in 2010.
In a lot of ways, LeBron James and Pat Riley have shaped the way we view the NBA now. When LeBron decided to move to Miami and start that super team and began to win championships, and now Pat Riley's doing it a different way because he's having to build through the draft.
Absolutely. LeBron James and Pat Riley fundamentally changed the NBA a decade ago when Riley put together the big three with LeBron James, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade, how teams were built, how they went big game hunting. And what LeBron James changed were how players, star players, looked at free agency. And after LeBron James went to Miami, it changed the way how players approached it. They could go where they wanted, when they wanted, and play with who they wanted. And it opened the doors for a lot of other players to make those decisions. Now, LeBron James back in LA, where Pat Riley started winning titles, and Riley 10 years later with a Miami team that was built far differently than gathered.
We've seen many trends develop in the NBA culture that has come to make things different in the NBA forever. The Golden State Warriors popularized three-pointers being shot in small ball teams and made centers shooting threes a must to be in the NBA. Taller guards basically eliminated smaller guards out of the NBA. Analytics changed the way the NBA is played nowadays. And finally, LeBron James' tendency to create super teams and lead his own path has inspired others to do the same. However, a question I want to ask you, the viewer, is do you think LeBron James was justified for what what he did and it was just other superstars after it that took things way too far in their own ways, or has the way LeBron James been operating himself in his NBA career was just as bad as other players in the current ages are handling themselves. In life, we have pioneers who start things, but other people will mold said idea and continue to change the idea of it for current generations. What turned into LeBron James simply wanting to try to win a ring without it being on hard difficulty mode, being with a team that couldn't improve their team in the future, was then twisted to, I'm going to upgrade my situation just to do it. That is the question I leave you with today as the viewer as I end this video. But as always, I hope you enjoyed today's video and learned something new, as my vision for this channel is to inform and entertain. Check out my social medias for the Inside Life of Alvini and the other channel news. Check out my Twitch, where I stream weekly. And lastly, if you want to talk to your boy, there is always my Discord. Links are in the description. But with all that out of the way, this is your boy, Alvini Linguine, saying peace.